Hello, hello, hello. So today we will be talking about the failures of the ANC in our series of the ANC's failures and victories in South Africa. So these are the failures from a historic perspective. We earlier mentioned the ANC started in 1912, and we will now have a look at what they did and didn't do, and these kinds of things. So like in a liberation struggle, these things are like often they're violent, right? Like it's not like you're going to get rid of an oppressor by offering them like a bouquet of flowers and chocolates and like, oh, please give me my freedom, and they'll be like, no, how dare you ask me? So let's go ahead. While the African National Congress, or ANC, celebrated for its role in South Africa's liberation from apartheid, its journey was not without internal conflicts, challenges, and actions that have drawn criticism. The liberation struggle was complex, and the ANC faced significant challenges in unifying its members and managing the movement. Some of these challenges have cast shadows on the ANC's history, revealing internal divisions, allegations of abuse within its camps, and difficulties in maintaining cohesion among its diverse factions. During the struggle against apartheid, the ANC operated both inside and outside of South Africa, often in difficult conditions, with its members scattered across African countries and beyond. In exile, the ANC established training camps in countries such as Angola, Zambia, and Tanzania to prepare its members for armed resistance against the apartheid regime. While these camps played a crucial role in training and sustaining the movement, reports of human rights abuses within the camps surfaced over the years, including allegations of torture, execution, and mistreatment of suspected informants or spies. This has led some historians and former members to question the ANC's commitment to the values of human rights and justices it championed in the fight against apartheid. So yes, like when you're going to start like an insurgency or a revolution or a rebellion or whatever you want to call it, like these organizations, so if we think of an organization or let's say government or a state institution, we think of some order, right? Like you go to the police station, someone stole your phone, you go to the police station, you lay a charge, like you have to fill in that little form and tell them what happened. They start the investigation. They may or may not catch the subject, and they will then apply a appropriate form of judgment. But let's say the police, in their investigation, they will look maybe they will look for fingerprints, CCTV footage. Maybe they will look at the opinions of or the witness testimonies of someone who saw that you stole someone else's phone. But what the police, in most countries, I'm not talking about some of these crazy ass countries, I'm talking about a normal country. The police isn't going to come and break your thumbs and force you into a false confession and stuff like that. And the police will also not normally be super paranoid, oh yeah, it's you have that look in your eyes. No, but often when, or in an organization as well, let's say, I don't know, Unilever or Ford or whatever, when there's a suspicion of malfeasance, how do you pronounce it? Please drop me a message. But because I'll forget about this and I won't look at this video again. But essentially, if there's any suspicion of malfeasance, they will do a due diligence investigation, and yeah, sometimes the whistleblower or what the snitch, or the whistleblower is, punished, but that's illegal. Like, you can't, in most normal places, you cannot, you cannot blow the whistle on someone. You cannot crack down on a whistleblower because this person just pointed out that there was theft, for example. So, but even, the worst case scenario, the whistleblower will be fired. Unless you're Julius Assange, or what was that other guy, Chelsea Manning? Yeah, Chelsea Manning or Edward Stone, unless you're something like that. But if you're just like a employee at Boeing and, you take a video about how awful the plane is being built, stuff like that, it's not like Boeing's going to come and, kill your children and break your kneecaps and these kinds of things. But it's because these organizations function in the daylight because they can. Everything what they do is legal. Now, when you are a underground organization like a liberation movement or an insurgent movement or whatever, you cannot, for obvious reasons, you cannot operate in daylight. And then when, due diligence is also not necessarily done as well, because it's per definition not they don't have criminologists, they don't have investigators or detectives within the organization to sort out problems, and they will go about it like a kangaroo court quite often. They will have disciplinary committees, and sometimes the things will work well, but my point is, because these organizations aren't organizations of justice, they are informal organizations, they cannot possibly follow normal routes of justice. So this is what happened to the ANC. People will get paranoid, or you will, let's say one of these people will fall in love, like one of the insurgents or what they call the freedom fighters, they will fall in love with a local girl, but that's your girl, your girlfriend, and then you get angry or jealous, and then you will accuse this person of being a spy or an informer to get rid of them, and then that may work. It's not difficult to start a witch hunt within such an organization. One of the most controversial incidents involves Camp Quatro in Angola, which served as a detention and punishment center for ANC members accused of being spies or traitors. Former detainees have recounted instances of physical and psychological abuse, describing how individuals suspected of disloyalty were interrogated, tortured, and in some cases executed without trial. While the ANC leadership later acknowledged some of these abuses, these incidents have left a stain on the organization's history, suggesting that the movement was, at times, willing to compromise on human rights to maintain internal discipline and security. These actions stand in stark contrast to the ANC's vision of a just and fair society. So yeah, Camp Quatro, there's probably books written about it. It's not something I can cover, maybe I will make a video about Camp Quatro because, Camp Quatro is interesting, in the sense that many of the ANC's detractors, when you're trying to, you get two kinds of criticism, legitimate criticism because, it's factual, and it's just, it can't be hidden or buried. And then you get criticism that goes a bit further, or either goes further or deeper, which is still good. And then you get criticism that's kind of borderlines on a hatchet job. So many, like, because it's so difficult, well, no, it's not difficult. We're going to do all of the ANC's malfeasance, but in general, it's not as easy to, like, vilify the ANC because it has done a lot. So one of the easiest ways to vilify them, especially if you're a white South African, is to go and look at this Camp Quattro in Angola and say, oh yeah, this was this horrible camp and stuff like that. And well, yes, it's true. Like I've heard stories, or I've read about stories, not heard from people, but I've read about stories where, like, for example, this one guy ran away and then they just shot him in the arm and amputated it. Yeah, so it's like, you know, it wasn't a nice place. It wasn't Folsom Prison, you know, it was a hectic, this was like a prison for like suspected spies, or what do you call it? What do they call it, like, in these? Because, like, remember, the ANC had a lot of, like, Marxist ideology. It wasn't a Marxist organization, but it's some of those ideas where, like, if you're a revolutionary, like, yeah, like, please, revolutionaries out there who's listening to this video, please don't crucify me or burn me for getting your ideology wrong. But the way I understand revolutionary movements is that if you question the revolution in any way, you become a counter-revolutionary. And once you're a counter-revolutionary, you know, bad news. Like, if it's like in a democratic era, like in the last, 35 years in South Africa, you know, like, accusing someone of being a counter-revolutionary, it's just like, but cause for the meal, par for the meal. Like, you know, people do it all the time. Like, oh, like, this person cheated on his wife, or he's a counter-revolutionary. So it's just this insult now being hauled around if you do something that people don't approve of. But back then in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't a joke. Like, if you're a counter-revolutionary, or even if the ANC found out you're an informant for the apartheid government, I believe that's death penalty. So take note, Camp Quattro was simply for people accused of being spies and informers, not proven spies and informers. I know for a fact proven spies and informers were executed. I don't know how many there were. Maybe like, and without trial, they say. So, like, maybe, and tortured. I will make a video about Camp Quattro sometime, just because, well, it's interesting. You know, I think revolutionary movements should be investigated, because quite often it's like, oh, these people are so awesome, look at everything they did for us, and they're treated as saints. But you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. You know, it's just a fact. And yeah, like, history shouldn't be whitewashed or forgotten, and you can make sure I won't forget it, and I will put it on the internet where it's kind of becomes whatever, unless YouTube, like, flashes its, like, service, I guess, then my work will be lost. Although if it's like propagated using a satellite, I don't know a lot about information technology, but yeah, if it's just like propagated with sea cables, you know, it'll be lost. But at the moment there's a radio signal, it like reflects into space, and even if Earth then stops existing a million years from now, my radio signals will still exist. Your radio signals will still exist. Like, it will be very faint, but nonetheless, according to the laws of electromagnetism, it will exist. So to a certain extent, dear viewer, you have already immortalized yourself. So that's like, never think too lowly of yourself. Okay, moving on. The ANC also faced significant ideological divisions and internal tensions amongst amongst its leadership and among its members during the liberation struggle. Different factions within the ANC had varied views on the methods and philosophies that should guide the struggle. Some members faced a more radical approach, while others advocated for a diplomatic and negotiated settlement. These ideological differences often resulted in power struggles and conflicts within the organization, weakening the unity of the movement. The presence of the South African Communist Party, or SACP, within the ANC's ranks also created tensions, as not all ANC members supported communist ideology. These internal rifts sometimes hampered the ANC's ability to present a unified front, and accusations of purges and favoritism within its rank occasionally emerged. So yeah, I don't know everything about liberation movements and political parties, but usually the bigger ones, like the ANC, is a broad church. Many people will refer to the ANC as a broad church. When I say broad church, I obviously don't mean Christian church. I just mean a group of very disparate individuals. Like obviously, like the majority will be some form within the organization, centrists of the organization's ideology. They will adhere to what's written in their constitution, but you will get people on the fringes, like either doves or hawks, or anarchists or libertarians or whatever, like who believe in the organization, but like maybe believe in organization merely as the best tool for furthering their own aim. And, yes, like a lot of Africans, not just South Africa, across Africa, they didn't necessarily view the Soviet Union like with maximum favorability. They viewed them as, like, let's say, friends and a very, very useful ally. But they were mindful, like, okay, here is, because the Soviet Union was, I know, like, during the Soviet Union, like, half of its population weren't ethnical Russians, but, well, most of the population were white. And if you look at someone from Kazakhstan or, like, Chechnya, they still appear to be white. So the ANC was very cognizant of the possibility of, yes, just another group of white people coming in, telling us what to do, and, questioning their motives. Taking the aid, taking the training, of course, but just like keep one eye, just, don't trust everyone. You should never trust, I hate being cynical here, but it's just, I believe it's a fact. Never trust anyone 100%. There's no such thing as a binary world. I think I've said this before. Even digital signals, a 1 and a 0, go and investigate how those things are made. Like, it's a Fourier transform. A Fourier transform isn't perfect. Like there's like some anomalies within the signal. And like, this is how it works. Like, within a liberal, within fact, there is like, I'm not questioning fact. I'm just saying the truth exists on a spectrum, right? And you will get things that look basically weird, but it's just, not everything falls within what you think it is. Like, so this is why I say even your friends and family, you can't trust them 100%. Maybe you can trust them 99.999999999%, but you can't trust them 100%. Do you understand? Like, so, it's the same in these liberation. Oh, my brain is so bad. It's the same within these liberation organizations, is that, like, they couldn't trust each other 100%. And within the organization, hence this Camp Quattro. And then, if you're an outsider, like a Chinese or a PRC or a Soviet Union official, sure, you're like, we will listen to you and thank you very much for the aid and we are friends. But, well, why are you so interested in Africa? Don't your people still then have paved roads? Is everyone living up to 90 years old? If not, why? Because suddenly now you are so interested in Africa. This was back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I know the Soviet Union, for those of you who are Russians, and who were apparatchiks within the Soviet Union. I watched this TV show. I will recommend it. The Americans. It's kind of crazy, but it's a very cool show. It's about this family. It's about the sleeper cell in the United States of the Soviet family, and by all measurement, they appear American. It's this man and wife, but they're KGB agents and spying on the government, and their children are American. Their children were born in the United States, but they know nothing of their parents' activity. And apparently there were people like that. It's a crazy show. Actually, what makes the show cool is you have this intrigue and thriller. It's a thriller, the thriller aspect of the TV show. But then on the flip side of the coin is it's a family show. Like the Waltons. It's a family show. So you have the Waltons. The Waltons was so interesting. The Waltons was this. I remember I was very small. The Waltons was on the South African Broadcast Commission, their channel. We had only three, when I was small, we had only three TV stations, and I can remember precious little about the Waltons. I just remember it was a family show. The Americans was a family show, and not a family show, half of it was family. And that's just interesting, but okay, that was a massive tangent. Let's get back to the facts. The historical facts. So you see, you had the South African Communist Party within the ANC, and that exists up until today. In late 2024, the time of this video was made, not as much as in the year 2000. In the year 2000, a lot of people were members of the the South African Communist Party. They had dual membership. You're a member of the ANC and you're a member of the South African Communist Party. So it's this weird duality that exists in both. And you go to separate meetings, and the ideology mostly overlaps. It's just the ANC is not interested in exporting its ideology everywhere, where the South African Communist Party truly is a communist, Marxist-Leninist organization. Further complicating the ANC's unity were ethnic and regional divides that sometimes influence leadership dynamics. While the ANC aimed to be a pan-African liberation movement inclusive of all South Africans, there were occasional ethnic clashes with people affiliated to their ethnic groups and regional loyalties that created division within the organization. Some members felt that the leadership positions and influence were disproportionately concentrated amongst particular groups, leading to dissatisfaction and even defection amongst certain factions. These divisions threatened the ANC's cohesion, highlighting challenges in balancing inclusivity with effective leadership. I can make I may be not the best person because I'm not black South African. A black South African person can make a channel about this stuff. They're not just the tribalism within the ANC, because the thing within Africa, and it's so complicated, like just in one organization, like within Africa, you know, because of colonialism, we're not like Europe, you know, where you've got like, you know, the borders conform to the ethnicity, you know, or like South Korea or Japan, you know, like the borders don't conform to the ethnicity because of colonialism. Do yourself a favor, for those of you who are super pro-colonialist, you know, oh, colonialism was good for Africa. Like, go and look at the Namibia-Botswana border. It's this, you know, the Libya-Algeria border. It's this line that just goes straight. Where the hell do you see a line that goes straight through something? Of course, you're going to cut ethnicity or a tribe into two. You know, like, that's just one problem. But then also there is like friction between these ethnicities that go back millennia. It's like neighbors, you know, like you can have like very good relationship with neighbors. I'm going to make a video about neighbors. There's some gonzo nonsense because neighbors are fascinating, but not here. It will. It's, yeah, I have to make a separate video, but like essentially, look, you can have very good relations with your neighbors, and you can have neighbors from hell, but there will be a fluctuation. Like, let's say you can have a super good neighbor, but then his dog comes and eat your, I don't know, your $5,000 plants that you imported from South America, and you know that's super rare. There's only 10 of them in the world, and you paid. We had to wait so long, you were on a wait list, and their dog comes and eats the thing and then takes a massive shit like on your porch. You know, yeah, you're going to be angry, not really at the dog because it's a stupid dog. Like, you're going to be angry at the owner, like, you know, what's going on. Even if it's like, you know, your best friend who happens to be your neighbor, you're not going to be a happy chappy. You're going to be super upset. And even if it's a bad neighbor, there may be occasions where you cooperate. Like, oh, okay, like your tree is growing into my garden, you should cut it. And then the guy will be like, well, I can't cut it because you've got vicious dogs. You know, they will attack me, or they will attack the person I sent to cut it down, and it'll be my problem. And then you're like, okay, I will cut it down for you. Will that be okay? At least the ones on my side. And the guy, if he's reasonable, if he's not an asshole, he will say, okay, yes, thank you. And then you'll do that, and that will lead to a cooperation, or you'll have a barbecue. In South Africa, we do a lot of barbecues. We're like the Americans, or the Argentinians, or the Aussies. Like, so those of you who have ever done a barbecue, the smoke from the fat is like, there's two series of smoke. The first set of smoke is like when you light the fire, and as the coal or the wood burns, it creates, especially wood, it just creates the smoke, and it goes like, the wood smoke's maybe not as pleasant. And then like what's more nice is when the fat, especially if you're barbecuing a traditional South African sausage or ribs or something, or a stomach. Like, okay, some of you may think stomach is disgusting, but any Argentine viewer who's looking at this video will know and agree with me. Beef stomach that's really well salted, barbecued, is nice. Not a lot because it's very fatty, like maybe this much, just as a starter to your main barbecue meal. In any case, if you barbecue super fatty meat, there's smoke everywhere, and that may go into your neighbor's garden. And then, like, you know, the neighbor will maybe be upset. But the thing is, he will then forgive you, because he knows he's going to make a barbecue next week, or some disgusting, or no, that's a wrong word, like some weird smelling goat or some weird smelling curry or whatever. We've got so many different foods in South Africa that have very weird smells, but like that will waft into your garden, and then you're like, well, look, it is what it is. Well, like, what are you going to do? This person, that's their way, and they happen to live next to me. And sometimes it can be beneficial. You can like have a business together, you know, like some, I don't know, God knows, like, you know, you entrepreneurs out there, start a business with your neighbor because they're just next to you. You're going to save so much money in transport. In any case, so in Africa, and there's like thousands of languages and ethnicities in Africa, much more than in Asia. And obviously, because of these differences, people will have long periods of peace. They may have periods of war, long periods of war, brutal war. They may have very good periods of peace. We know this because we have found like lots of trading routes in Africa. Like, for example, there will be relationship between pastoralists and agriculturalists because they are creating different kinds of food. But also, like, pastoralists will move into the areas of the agriculturalists because their cattle or goats or whatever need like sustenance. And that may cause then a conflict. Like Sudan, that is a very good example. Sudan, what you saw in South Sudan and Darfur, a lot of it's religion and ethnicity and language and oil and shit like that. But most of it was actually just the different lifestyles of the people, pastoralist versus agriculturalist. And then there's just like, you know, if it comes down to tribalism, like, you know, ethnicity, I don't know, because they're all black, but I also don't want to say all black people are the same. If you're a black person out there, please comment, because Africa is so diverse. I have read that Africa itself is genetically more diverse than the rest of the world combined. So for those of you who live in Norway, go and compare yourself to a Mapuche person, a Mapuche Native American in Chile. And if you're a Mapuche Native American in Chile, if you understand English as well, compare yourself to an Aboriginal, or what's the right word for them, a Native Australian or original person Australian in Australia, and look at these differences. You're genetically closer, you know, than people in Africa where there's this massive diversity. And when there's such diversity, there is also a greater chance for conflict. And like, getting back to the border issue, so the one side of the coin with the border issue is that tribes were divided. On the other side of the coin is that you get a lot of groups of people lobbed together who may have historical grievances. And in the organization, an organization will go through flux. You know, at one stage they may have leaders from tribe A at dominated. At another stage they may have leaders from tribe B who's dominating. Like in the year, like between, like, so Nelson Mandela, I hope you know who Nelson Mandela is, the greatest South African. I lived in South America for a while, and whenever I took a taxi or I met a stranger, people were like, my Spanish was like very rudimentary, but I could communicate with people, you know, like reasonably well. And I would just like, they will ask me where I'm from because they would hear, like, you know, I don't speak with Spanish with American accent. So they will ask me where I'm from, and I will just say South Africa, and they'll be like, oh, Nelson Mandela. Like, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, you know, that's where he's from. Is he Xhosa? Damn, I have to get these black pronunciations right for my video. If you're a Xhosa or a Xhosa person, please forgive my pronunciation. I'm going to have to start practicing on the names before. In my other video, what's it about farm murders, I spoke about Andile schema. Sorry, sir. I'm going to practice your name as well because I want to make a video about you. I think you're a very smart, intelligent person. I disagree with almost everything you say, but I still think you're very interesting and intelligent. However, for example, that was like, that's a Xhosa tribe. That was Nelson Mandela's tribe, along with Thabo Mbeki. That was the second president. They were Xhosa. And then OR Tambo Xhosa as well, maybe. Then you had Jacob Zuma, who was Zulu. And like now we have Cyril Ramaphosa, who's a Venda. And the Vendas are super interesting. I'm going to make a video about them. It's like their language it's a different language group in South Africa. Like when they speak, most languages are, most of the black languages are like mutually intelligible. They're distinct languages, but like, it's like the difference between, let's say, Dutch and German. You can, here and there, you can pick some stuff up. But the Vendas are totally different. Not the time to speak about Vendas, but my point is, because of the ANC's diversity, of course, you're going to have this conflict, and then you will also have a lot of Indians in the, Indian South Africans in the ANC. You're going to have mixed ethnicity or brown. I like to call them brown Afrikaners because they're culturally almost the same as me. Well, they're culturally exactly the same as me. They also they speak the same language as me, just Afrikaans, just with a different accent. They eat the same food as me. Actually, Afrikaner cuisine is based on their cuisine. Like, we copied it. So we eat the same cuisine. Like, we watch the same sport, rugby and cricket. Our churches are very similar. Like, these Protestant churches are very similar. We listen almost to the same music. So it's so close. Also they're very honest, like Afrikaans people. Okay, no, I'm not saying we're honest all the time. Obviously you get awful people who's freaking liars and manipulators. I'm going to make a video about fucked up Afrikaners sometime. But like, anyway, these people will be in the organization. Then you'll actually get white people like Afrikaners or English people or other European immigrants, like famous ones, like a lot of Jews, actually. Like Joe Slovo was a Jew, for example. What's the other famous one? Was it Goldberg? What's his first name? Judge Goldberg? Michael Goldberg? David Goldberg? I don't know. It's like this Jewish guy. Those of you who know anything about South Africa is like Dennis Goldberg. There we go, Dennis Goldberg. I think he was a Jew, and there was like a lot of them. There was this one guy, Jeff Bezos. No, not Jeff Bezos. That guy's that's the CEO of Amazon. Oh my word! But it's this Greek guy that was like Nelson Mandela's lawyer. He died the other day. Greek South Africans. So it's just this super huge diversity. So you can imagine, like there is going to be, if not conflict, at least disagreements. So. It's natural, but sometimes because it's like, you're in a state of war, or at least insurgency or quasi-insurgency, depending on the timeline. If you're in such a state of war, obviously tempers are going to flare once every while because, you're scared or you're angry or like you're paranoid or you're just stressed out, and you will. If you fight with someone, it will be a bit more colorful than, let's say, a fight you have with your wife or your kids. It's going to be different. Let's continue. In addition, the ANC's reliance on foreign support during the liberation struggle came with complex political consequences. While countries like the Soviet Union China, and several other African nations provided critical resources. Oh my word, sorry, that's my stupid alarm going off. I'm cutting the video, I'll be shortly back. Further complicating the ANC's unity were ethnic and regional divides that sometimes influenced leadership dynamics. While the ANC aimed to be a Pan-African liberation movement, inclusive of all South Africans, there were occasions where ethnic affiliations and regional loyalties created divides within the organization. Some members felt that leadership positions and influence were disproportionately concentrated amongst particular groups, leading to dissatisfaction and even defection amongst certain factions. These divides threatened the ANC's cohesion, highlighting challenges in balancing inclusivity with effective leadership. So, geez, this is actually... Okay, so yeah, this is like, oh my word, yeah, like this chapter, the first chapter of like ANC problems, like is so broad because we're trying to cover in like 1.2 hours. We're covering like freaking, almost 100-year history. And yeah, it's impossible. I will just make another set of videos, although I'll have to do research. I'm not like that glued up, but like one of the main things, for example, was like one of the factions was like you had internal fighters, people who were like within the borders, like guerrilla movements, moving from safe house to safe house, doing sabotage, sometimes like a terrorist bomb here and there. I want to make this clear, by the way. Like, a lot of people like say the ANC is a terrorist organization. That's true, they were, but go and have a look at how many people died in ANC terror attacks and compare that to, like, let's say the Sandinistas, who was also a terrorist organization in, Nicaragua, or go and compare it to, like, go and compare it to, for example, Shining Path in Peru, or ISIS, I don't even want to talk about ISIS, but then you'll quickly see that the ANC is not nearly as malicious a terrorism organization as people would like it to be, like some people who live in denial. I am not saying this is part of the criticism of the ANC. I spoke about the good things they did historically. There's a video for that. This is about the bad things. I'm not like going to pussyfoot around the bad shit they did. I'm just saying, look, it shouldn't be overemphasized. Here, is there something about the church? But so they bombed this one church. That was a massive thing, like in South African history. I'm just quickly going to talk about the Church Street bombing. It was this guy called Alan Busak, who's like a mixed ethnicity or a brown Afrikaner guy, and he, like, under someone's orders, a higher up, he planted a bomb in the main road of Pretoria. That was East Hill, the capital of South Africa, and a lot of people died. I think like 20, 30 people. No, I don't know. Look, I'm just guessing. 10 to 30 people died, and some of them were children, and it was brutal. Like, freaking, I remember when I was small seeing it on TV. It was like freaking body parts and blood, and oh my word. It was like, terrorist attack, standard terrorist attack. That was the biggest one, though. The smaller ones, there were much smaller ones, like, and a lot were just sabotage. I remember when I was like 14, the last organization to have this is not the ANC, this is a different organization, but it was acted in a similar way, to have a peace treaty with the National Party was, I think, a ZAPU, and they planted a bomb at a substation, like maybe, I don't know, 2 kilometers from our house, 3 kilometers, and but the bomb went off, and it's a substation, so there's no personnel. So it went off like at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning, specifically to make sure there's no casualties. But we were without electricity for like a week. It sucked. Back then we had electricity, and then we had like the last 10 years we had no electricity. Well, no. We had like brownouts. That's a different video. But like now it's gone, by the way. We have electricity again. Like they went from a mixed energy portfolio the government went from mixed energy to just burning coal again. So now like energy is like solved. Say what you want about coal, but it works for South Africa. Like we need to burn coal. We don't have the money to. We're not France or China. We can't just build nuclear plants everywhere. It'll be nice, but we can't. In any case, so we didn't have electricity, but a lot of their work, the ANC's terrorism, was more sabotage. So there was some form of terror that, like, okay, yeah, we're gonna cut your electricity, and if you are too rough with us, maybe we will cut you or bomb you, like be careful. In any case, getting back to the regionalism, so you had the internal guys who will be freedom fighters and who will like maybe to try these small terrorism attacks or engage the army, or usually not the army was damn strong, but like the police, engage with them in gun battles. Like not a lot, usually the police will win because it's just we had very good weapons. We developed them with Israel, and the police had good training as well. Like my granddad was a general in the police. Don't worry, my granddad was a good person. He was actually kind of a dissident. He was censored by the government because once he spoke about politics to a colleague, my granddad questioned apartheid. He was like, my granddad was very anti-communist, but he didn't view black people as a problem or a threat. Like, in fact, he viewed the black people who were in the police as allies and fighting against communism. And once he told a colleague, like, this is ridiculous. Why do the black people who are my allies, my brothers, why do they have to use a different bathroom? That's ridiculous. And then the colleague snitched on him because that was just the way. Apartheid was like East Germany, like you were encouraged to snitch on people. And then they didn't fire him because he was so good at his job, he was like in the, the mechanical school in Benoni. He was the head of it. And essentially, like, they just told him, look, okay, General, if you talk about politics again, you'll get fired, like badly. You'll never work again. And he wasn't a rich man, so he just kept his mouth shut. But in any case, they were well trained. However, the ANC caused a lot of problems for them. That's why we changed. That's why one of the reasons we became a democracy is like the army and the police became tired of fighting non-winnable insurgency or a non-winnable revolution, whatever you want to call it. Like, they just couldn't. Then you had groups who were stationed like in the neighboring countries, like Mozambique, Angola, these places. That was a bit more dangerous because there was like a greater possibility if you cross the border to engage the army now you're not even fighting the police. Now you're fighting the actual army, the South African National, the South African Army. That was what it was called back then. Now it's called the South African National Defence Force, to like emphasize the fact that South Africa is no longer an aggressive country. We used to be a super aggressive country. And actually, because of that aggression, you were taking a huge risk crossing the border to attack them, because they had very good scouts, who could pick up your movements. And they would not only like attack you, or maybe they will miss you, but like if they intercept you, you may die, good possibility. Or actually they will cross the border themselves and go into the neighboring countries and take out the camp. That was common. The special forces will do that. So like these people across the board, in the bordering countries, were under the greatest amount of danger. That was a faction. Then you had people who were just caught by the security services, like Musia Lakota, Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko. Steve Biko wasn't part of the ANC, but like in any case, these people were sent to prison, and they could still smuggle messages out, and they were still regarded as leaders. But that's like different. Like, you're in prison. It's a different, like there's this wall between you and some of your supporters. Then you had people in Western Europe who were like friends of these super liberal organizations, like let's say some in Finland, some in France, even like some in the UK. Thabo Mbeki, the second president of South Africa, he spent a lot of time in the UK, and like that was the intellectual wing of like the leadership. Then the military wing, they were in the Soviet Union. That was like, for example, I think Jacob Zuma, yes, president. I'm going to call him president. Maybe I should just call Zuma President Zuma from now on. It's just. Yeah, I want to be a disrespectful guy. If you ever saw a video where I refer to Zuma as President Zuma, maybe it's I'm better than President Zuma. No, that's maybe foolish to say. I'm just going to call him President Zuma from now on, just because of etiquette. In any case, President Zuma received like training in the Soviet Union. That was a different branch as well. So you see, you have these different. It's not a different branch. It's just like a different, like, how do you say, division or a part, And because even like there was then no clear definition. Your rank is your rank and your role is your role. But there's still the fact that you guys in Europe are not nearly as much in danger. The apartheid forces could still get you in Europe. There was this one woman. It was quite famous. Dulcie September. The apartheid government bombed her office in Paris to take her out, and they did. Like, you could still be taken out in Europe. In the Soviet Union, you were safe. Because the KGB was just way better than our intelligence forces. Like, if you were an apartheid intelligence guy, going to the Soviet Union would have been not necessarily suicide, but it would have been extremely difficult and dangerous. But even if you were an ANC guy in the Soviet Union, it was still kind of expected from you to return sometime to apply your training, and then you would be in danger. Zuma was in danger. President Zuma was in danger all the time, because he was like super intelligent. Like, he still is. He's 87 now or whatever. But a lot of people would say, President Zuma's stupid because he doesn't have education. He's got primary school education or something. Big mistake. One of the most intelligent people in South Africa. Like, the apartheid forces could never catch him. Like, he was the head of intelligence for the ANC during the liberation struggle, and he would just always like slip out underneath their noses. They couldn't catch him. That would kind of be a division. then also like the people, like you were in Africa, like most of the governments, like Mozambique, Zimbabwe after 1980, to a lesser extent Botswana and Lesotho, but still them, like SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Liberation Organization in Namibia, the government of Angola, the MPLA, Movimento, how do you say it in Portuguese? Movimento Popular Liberación de Angola. Okay, that's not Portuguese, that's Spanish. But like that's what it stands for. And these were very different organizations. Like, you know, so the ANC are different, like, and Zambia, like the ANC Algeria, like the ANC Libya. Oh, Libya, I forgot to mention Libya. Libya was a big ally of the ANC. Like one of the first people that saw Nelson Mandela, foreign leaders that saw Nelson Mandela after he was released, was Muammar Gaddafi from Libya. So because all of these countries are like super different, yeah, they have the same ideology, like liberation ideology, but they're different. Like, you know, there's different ethnicities, different, you know, where they were colonized by different countries, different mindsets, different religions. Like the ANC had to act in different ways in these countries, and they would like sometimes even come in conflict with the government. Because like, let's say, the government of Mozambique will have a very different policy towards apartheid South Africa than, let's say, the government of Zimbabwe. And then, let's say, the government of Zimbabwe would then tell the ANC, okay, you can stay here, sure, and you can even launch the occasional cross-border attack, but these are the rules. And if you transgress the rules, you're in trouble. We'll either expel you or we will just jail you. So, like, yeah, this is like further complicated, like the ANC's like role, you know, what it tried to do, and sometimes they did stir shit up with the locals, like let's say bad relations with like local women, or you know, if there was like a local village near a military base, maybe steal some of their chickens, whatever. Like nothing major, but nothing great. You know, like a lot of their people weren't angels, of course. Like, you know, like we as well, normal people. But during times of war, our demons come out. Okay, carrying on. During the liberation struggle, the ANC also had to navigate relationships with other anti-apartheid organizations, including the Pan-Africanist Congress, or PAC, and the Black Consciousness Movement, or BCM. While all these groups shared a common goal of ending apartheid, they often differed in approach and ideology. The ANC sometimes strained relations with these groups, led to challenges in unifying the broader anti-apartheid movement. Rather than collaborating seamlessly, the different organizations occasionally viewed one another as rivals, leading to missed opportunities for cooperation and a fragmented resistance movement. This lack of coordination sometimes weakened the effectiveness of the ANC apartheid struggle, delaying progress towards liberation. So yeah, they would like disagree with the PAC. I don't know if they snitched on them. Like, I would actually like to investigate the relationship between the ANC and these organizations further. They had a terrible relationship with the IFP, or the Inkatha Freedom Party, because the Inkatha Freedom Party was solely a Zulu organization, like maybe an Indian here or there, a white person here or there, but basically just they were Zulus. And at one stage they were co-opted by the apartheid government, and they started attacking the ANC. But then the ANC would disproportionately react back. No mercy. You will attack those people with, you'll attack them with machetes. Okay, like a machete death is maybe not, it's not like a gun against the head. It's like maybe a slow death. Then, okay, it's not in my script, but I would like to talk about the necklace. Now, if you're South African, you will immediately know what the necklace is, unless you're 15 years old or something. But like, maybe you studied that in history. I don't know. Like, if you're not supposed to watch this if you're under 18. I mark my videos as not suitable for children, just in case I get into trouble. But like, I talk about violent stuff often, but like, because that's just the way the world goes. But okay, children doesn't need to be exposed to as much of it. But if you are, if you happen to be a child, and if you are, don't watch this goddamn channel. Just like listen to your parents and watch stuff meant for people above 18. Like, tell us if you tell us a bit more about what history you've learned about the ANC, like specifically for this video. Like, tell us what bad things you learn in the curriculum these days. It'll just be interesting for me to know. I know nothing. Like, I mean, I left school in 1999. So, obviously the curriculum has changed since then. Tell us a bit what you know about the bad things the ANC did, if they wrote anything. Like, I'm sure they did. Like, the South African Education Department can't be retarded, like, I hope they're not retarded, like, because, the ANC did bad things, hence this video. And this video, I can go on for 10 hours, but I don't know as much. Like, but there are many books written about this, like, if I transcribe or rewrite, like, if I talk about the book, just like commentating on it, reading and commentating on it, it will be a 30-hour video. Like, well, not a 30-hour video. I can't talk and read that much in one setting. But like, yeah, there was a lot of stuff. And yeah, the ANC was like, they had bad relationships with the IFP. Sorry, getting back to the necklace. The necklace, like, you take a car tire, the rubber, and you put it over someone's shoulders, like, preferably, like, if they're small enough. Otherwise, like, just put it around their neck, you bound, hence the word necklace, like, but it works apparently way better if you can get it over their shoulders. It's so nasty that I know this, but like, if it's a fat guy or a muscular guy, you just like freaking tie them up and put it over their neck. But okay, a child, like, sorry, but this happened. They necklaced children. Now, before I go on about that, like, let me just finish about the necklace explanation. Then within the tire, you pour some petrol, and you pour some petrol over the tire on the outside. Then you light it up. Then that person burns to death with the mixture of rubber and petrol. Very nasty way to go. There's like, on YouTube, you'll find videos about it, like about the necklace. Like, I believe South Africa was the only country in the world that killed people that way. A very South African way to kill people. Maybe, I'm very anti-death penalty. I think it's barbaric. Just my personal view. I don't have a big problem with people who want the death penalty, because I think I will do a video about crime, even though it's very dark. But for example, if you're a murderer in South Africa, some murders in South Africa are super brutal. And I am a nobody to tell a South African who has lost a family member or a friend to murder that the death penalty shouldn't exist. Like, if you want it, fine. Like, and if that gives you closure, fine. And maybe you should have it. I'm just like, my personal opinion is, I don't think it would make the matter better. Like, if someone kills my mother, I would rather see that. Well, they won't be, because South Africa will release you after 20 or 15 years even. But I'd rather see that person rot in jail, like, than go free. Because for me, being in a South African prison for 35, 40 years is going to be a bigger punishment than hanging by the neck for 5 minutes. Like, if you kill someone, I think maybe a punishment for longer than 5 minutes is appropriate. But I fully understand the fact that for many victims, the mere existence of this perpetrator, like, will upset you, will trigger your PTSD. And if you want that person dead, I understand. I'm not judging you. Like, but yeah, like, getting back to these necklaces, the things were goddamn brutal. And now and then, especially in the late 80s and early 90s, they would have, the ANC had this thing called, was it the ANC Youth League, or what was it called? No. It was called was it called the Soweto Soccer Club? I think it was called the Winnie Mandela Soccer Club. It was Winnie Mandela was the. I am no fan of Winnie Mandela. Like, some people are, some people call her the mother of the nation, and maybe that's true. But I view her more like Mao Zedong's wife. Super crazy person. Which Mao Zedong unfortunately had to suffer with. I would not marry such a person. Well, maybe I will, but I'll divorce her like probably 3 days later. But like, he's saying, and I'm not saying it because she's a woman, I'm just saying it because she's a psycho, like, and I will tell you why she's a psycho. It's been proven in courts of law that as the head of the soccer club, it was actually a political organization, and to be more specific, a militant resistance organization. Let me qualify this. In this entire video, I'm not questioning the ANC's right to resist violently oppression, because violence was used against them. If someone uses violence against you, you are justified. I don't think it's the best idea, but you are justified to use violence back. Because, like, if they're going to kill you, like, why not just, like, strike first? It's natural. Preemptive strike, like the Israeli, the 6-Day War, where they just went and they bombed the enemy aircraft before they could take off. I am not judging anyone for resisting apartheid violently. I'm just judging the methods. And they would, like, in the soccer club, it was mostly boys, teenagers. And yeah, now, like, Winnie Mandela was in charge of this gang of teenagers. And, like, look, I'm not going to totally demonize Winnie Mandela. She maybe did some good things, like, she liberated the country. And I can make videos freely, and I can say what I want freely in a very small part because of her contribution. And to that, I'm thankful. But getting back to and this is probably worse than Camp Quattro, because in Camp Quattro only adults died, or near adults, 17, 18-year-olds. Basically, in the soccer club, there was, and this is just what we know about, this is the tip of the iceberg. It was this, what was his name? Was it Stompie Sepe or someone else? Like, they necklaced him because they believed whether he was a police spy or not up for discussion, speculation. But in any case, they necklaced him to death. They burnt him to death. Even like ISIS burns people. And this is probably if you go to the Apartheid Museum and in South Africa, it's in Johannesburg. I think is it close to Constitution Hill? I would suggest anyone to, if you're a tourist, if you're an international person, don't visit Johannesburg. It's an ugly city. It's not touristic at all. There's one place, though, I can recommend, and that's the Apartheid Museum. However, those of you who are insensitive in any way, but if you are sensitive in such a way, you would not have watched this video, or you would have tuned out by now. I am assuming, if you are still listening, that you can stomach this, but it's still brutal. It's about apartheid. Hence the name Apartheid Museum. And oh my word, if you're Afrikaans, you feel so guilty because what the apartheid government did was so disgusting, and awful, and crime against humanity. But then in the same museum, and this is which I'm thankful for, because it gives the Apartheid Museum greater credibility because it looks at the entire history of South Africa during that period for everyone. And that would include some of the violence of the ANC. And that would include the IFP, for a short period of time, if you're an IFP supporter or activist, you can also be necklaced. I don't know how many people were necklaced in South Africa, 5, 100. Good question. I've got no idea. If you're a history student, please tell us. I just know it existed, for a fact. They show videos of this in the museum, and you can go and look for a video like that if you wish, but just trust me, I hope I have made this clear. Seeing someone burned to death is no joke. It's freaking brutal. And they showed that, really nasty. And this is probably, for me, the greatest stain on the ANC historically in the pre-1994 history. That's their biggest stain. Let's go on. In addition, the ANC's reliance on foreign support during the liberation struggle came with complex political consequences. While countries like the Soviet Union, China, and several other African nations provided critical resources and support to the ANC, this reliance on external assistance sometimes subjugated the organization to external pressures and influenced its policies and strategies. Allegations arose that the ANC made ideological concessions to secure support, leading to some members and critics to question whether the ANC's leadership was truly autonomous or whether it had compromised its principles to secure foreign aid. The Cold War context further complicated these relationships, with Western powers viewing the ANC with suspicion due to its associations with communist countries, potentially delaying international support for the anti-apartheid cause. So this is kind of complicated because lots of countries supported the ANC. You had China and the Soviet Union, which, by the way, is very different. Because of the Sino-Soviet split in, the 60s, when Khrushchev became premier of the Soviet Union, there was a split. So you had Mao. There was actually not just Marxism, you had Maoism, and then you had like what you call it, Marxism, Leninism of the Soviet Union. And they had competing interests, like even in Africa. Like, so for example, Zimbabwe got some Maoist support, whereas the other countries got Soviet support. And these countries had different conditions. I think China wanted a bit more total liberation than the Soviet Union, which was more, how do you say, I want to say non-racist because that's not maybe the right word, but the Soviet Union tried to be more inclusive towards everyone, whereas China was just like, okay, we are communists, but like, this is your country. If you want to run it according to your cultural characteristics, you are fine. Then you had like Cuba, which was also slightly different from the Soviet Union. Cuba supported the ANC a lot, by the way, as well. Then you had the European countries, like, let's say, Finland or France, or the UK, who also supported the ANC later to an extent. And they were basically like, okay, the Soviet Union's involvement is problematic. That would be, let's say, a Finnish or a French argument. And to please a country like Finland and France, because the ANC knew, let's say by the late 80s, the ANC knew, and the apartheid government knew it as well, hence negotiations later on, which is the next chapter, transition. They knew that they will be in a situation where they are soon going to, within the next 5, 10, 20 years, they will have relationships with all of these countries, and they will need their money to invest in the country. They'll need to have a relationship, like all countries have relationships with each other, except if you're whack ass crazy in North Korea. But like, what's that other place? Tajikistan. There's like some crazy Central Asian country as well. Eritrea as well, by the way. They call Eritrea Africa's North Korea, but that's not the time to talk about Eritrea. So the ANC, a big criticism of the ANC is that it didn't distribute land and economic resources to the black majority, and some of it was because of the economic policies of the European countries. Like, the European countries have a large amount of socialism, hence the great medical care you get like in, let's say, Sweden or whatever, but like, they're also not Soviet by a long stretch of the imagination, because freaking the Soviet Union is just there, and they had historical wars with the Soviet Union, so massive distrust. So the ANC had to please both these parties. Okay, so a lot of the initial like militancy of the ANC, although I don't believe the ANC was ever that militant. ZAPU was militant. That's a different organization. I know very little about the ZAPU. Like, I want to read about them. Very small organization, but still very interesting. And then later, very late in the game, the ANC, the United States entered, like during the Reagan era, the late Reagan era, not the first 4 years. It started becoming clear that the Soviet Union is going to lose the Cold War. I watched this movie on Reagan with Dennis Quaid. It was a good movie. I don't know why it got such bad ratings on Rotten Tomatoes because I thought it was a good movie. Like it was very slanted towards like a good Reagan presidency. It didn't go into all the details of the Iran-Contra scandal. And I mean, the Contras committed crimes against humanity. It was a very, very brutal organization, which the Americans supported at that time under Reagan, and Afghanistan as well. Like a lot of the shit that we see in the world today is because of American or Reaganite. You know, can't lobby all Americans for the stupidity of their government. But like in the late Reagan years, it became apparent that the Soviet Union and even Cuba, they're going to fall because their systems, they're bankrupt. And then the US started to think, okay, who will be the next competitor? China. Like, the apartheid government has lost its utility. They're fighting insurgency they cannot win. And it's better for us now to start not fully support the ANC, but to have a relationship with them. And the oil sanctions were due to a large extent to the United States. Because remember, okay, like Iran had sanctions on South Africa from day one, obviously. Okay, not day one, like after the Shah fell, there was a Reza Pahlavi, who was a nutcase, by the way. When the Shah fell, they imposed total oil sanctions, but it didn't matter. Like South Africa got oil from the United States then. Remember the United States in the 80s had a lot of oil. Like you remember, I don't know, those of you who are old enough, like Generation X, like early millennials will remember that TV show Dallas. Like that show, you know, the Americans had oil, like, and they exported, and we just got some of that oil. But then at one stage, like that Henry Kissinger, which is a duplicitous bastard, by the way. A lot of people will respect Henry Kissinger, but you can, if you look at the criticisms against Henry Kissinger, and I know, okay, Johnny Harris did a great video on Henry Kissinger. You should watch Johnny Harris's video about Henry Kissinger. He's not a very nice man. Not a very nice man at all. Very manipulative. He worked for a manipulative man, was also a bastard, Nixon, by the way. And they kind of fed off each other. It was this weird symbiosis of like manipulation. They said like Kissinger, like it started a bit with Nixon and it was like completed by Reagan. Like, okay, the apartheid government's going to fall. Like, you need to start changing apartheid South Africa. And they started putting some sanctions, not a lot, but they put enough on the apartheid government to pressure the business leaders, people like Anton Rupert. The Ruperts in South Africa get a lot of flack, but this isn't well discussed in South Africa. The richest man in the 80s in South Africa by far was Anton Rupert. Anton Rupert, I want to do a video about him. But in any case, he went to P.W. Botha, who was the president, and he told him, look, we, the business community, and the Afrikaner business community in particular, are suffering because of your stupidity. Let's start negotiations, you know. And Rupert had ties with Americans. And then it became clear to the ANC that essentially now they have to work with the United States as well, which is the polar opposite of China and the Soviet Union and the African liberation organizations. You know, like the US at that time maybe still is a colonialist power, you know, and the ANC just knew, okay, because of this powerful country, we are better off dealing, and this is why what I said it before, I'll say it again, this is what I like about the ANC is we've got relationships with everybody. Like, I'm very thankful of being South African, that if I show my passport, you know, like across the world, I will be safe because we're a neutral country. Okay, except maybe if, you know, if ISIS captures me, then I'm done. But everyone is fucked if they're caught by ISIS. Like, ISIS is the Nazis of the 21st century. But like, this is because like the ANC negotiated, you know, during the last part of the Cold War, they negotiated, they spoke to everyone, they made friends with everyone. And this is a major criticism of the ANC as well, that they sold out black people because they started building relationships with these European and American and Canadian and Japanese places. Like Thabo Mbeki, President Thabo Mbeki is also responsible for that because he lived in the UK for so long. He's very anglicized. Like, his English is extremely, if you hear a video, unfortunately probably now soon he will die just because he's so old, but like, his English is super good. You can hear he's a guy, where did he study? Yeah, he got like a master's degree or something at Oxford. Very smart guy. That's probably the smartest president we have ever had. But like, he was one of the guys who also put us, okay, South Africa isn't a neoliberal country, but we have some neoliberal aspects, and Thabo Mbeki put us on that course. So this is the criticism, like, there wasn't, because of this the behavior of the ANC in the late 80s, there wasn't economic liberation, which is haunting South Africa to this day. Now, that's a different argument about how South Africa should transform, but it's still a criticism, hence my inclusion of it, depending on your politics. But this, you know, I always try to be neutral. Very difficult to do in this retarded, you know, this is why I started this like channel, is because there's so many lies and such polarization in the world that I feel the center is being attacked, and in any case I'm trying to be neutral, so I have to include this. Sorry if you don't like what I have to say. Sorry, not sorry. It's such a millennial thing to say. Let's continue. Even as the ANC fought against apartheid, financial mismanagement and allegations of corruption surfaced within the organization. In exile, the ANC relied on donations and funds from sympathetic governments and organizations across the world. However, there were occasional accusations of funds being misappropriated or used for personal gain by some ANC officials. This financial mismanagement not only affected the organization's operations, but also raised concern about accountability and transparency within the movement. These issues foreshadowed some of the financial mismanagement challenges the ANC would later face in government. Yeah, the script is being very, very liberal when it speaks about financial mismanagement. Was one of the biggest instances of corruption. So yeah, corruption is obviously also not like a binary. It doesn't fall out of the sky, you know, the speed of like a stone. Like it has a history, you know, it starts small and then it becomes a snowball. And this is obviously what happened. Okay, in summary, the ANC celebrated its role for ending apartheid, but there was internal divisions, ideological tensions, human rights abuses, corruption, and, you know, to this day in South Africa, there is like human rights abuses by the police, for example. And you can say, okay, it comes from, violence comes from apartheid. Many sociologists have done research about this, quantitative and qualitative research. And that's true. But there's a fair amount of violence that came from the ANC. They were it wasn't like a bunch of Gandhi people, or hippies. They were violent, like I said it earlier. You can't make omelette without cracking an egg. And apartheid especially. I mean, apartheid was Nazism light. Coke light, Nazism light. And if you are like this, it was a lot like apartheid was a lot like, let's say, the government of Augusto Pinochet, or what was it, Galtieri in Argentina. They were violent. They were super violent from the get-go. And when someone or something is that violent, you can, and we spoke about it in the ANC victories, or the historical part of the victory section about, what was it? Was it Sol Plaatjes or Pixie something was his name? Those people, they tried to reason with the apartheid government. It failed. And then they started ramping it up, the violence. And, you can have your own opinion about it, like how bad it was. I don't think it was as bad, but it was bad enough to create, to aid the culture of violence we have in South Africa today. Obviously, apartheid's responsible for much more of it. If we just look at the historical reasons for violence, obviously there's other reasons for violence as well. But like alcohol or economic disparity, but essentially the ANC has a mixed history, and this video was about some of the violence, some of the financial mismanagement, and that's all for the history. If you're a student of history, especially South African history, if you recently finished your matric exam, please drop us a message or drop me a message. I'm not Queen of England. I'm just saying us because maybe one day I'll have an employee. Although, no, look, Joe Rogan's got 3 employees, so maybe I should I should say but I can say us because there will be other people watching this, even if not many. But tell us about your experience, or what you read. If you're a student who just finished school, tell us about what you have read, what you know. If you finished university, tell us about what you studied. If you did a master's or a PhD, tell us about what you have learned or what you have proved. Proved because you're a doctor now. What will be most interesting is if you lived in that time, especially if you were a member of the ANC, or if you suffered from the ANC. Tell us a bit about the history of the ANC, if you have first-hand experience. You'll be super old, by the way. I don't know if you will watch YouTube if you're that old, but maybe you do. In any case, drop us a message, and that will be very interesting. Thank you, and very much for watching this. I know it was been dark, but look, dark things need to be addressed. It's just the fact of life. And sorry if I triggered you, if I brought up some PTSD, but people need to know this. So they need to know about the violent history of the ANC for 2 reasons. Point 1, it was a crime. But point 2, also that it won't be embellished or, you know, taken out of context or made worse than it really is. Like, I've heard people saying, making Camp Quattro sound like Auschwitz, which it was definitely not. So that's the purpose of this video. Next up, we will be looking at the transition. The transition period is the next chapter. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.